Welcome back to the Dad Chronicle, where we share stories from dads all around the world. I'm your host, Alex Albisu. This is episode 146. On today's episode, I welcome back a familiar voice to the show, somebody who last showed up on episode 95, but since then we've been hanging out quite a bit, playing World of Warcraft, talking about dad stuff. It's Bobby Frankenberger. If you recall from the last time Bobby was on this show, we talked a lot about his life as a stay-at-home dad. Several years now have passed, and quite a lot has happened, including how his kids have grown up, and there's quite a bit of change that's happening in his house. With this in mind, I thought it would be great to have Bobby back on the show and catch up on what's been going on and to talk about some of these changes. First and foremost, we talk about preparing for puberty.
The biggest, most disruptive, most challenging and heart-wrenching in a lot of ways as a parent change is one that I'm going through right now, and I don't feel like anyone maybe can or at least didn't adequately prepare me for it, which is the transition into being a teenager and going through puberty.
We talk about the shift in the relationship he has with his daughter.
It was like someone had taken over her, like an alien had abducted her and replaced her mind with somebody else. It really felt that way.
We discuss how he's trying to empathize with the changes she's going through.
When you were a teenager, it's when you really started to become a lot more coming into yourself. And I think we do have a lot more capability to reach back there and think about what it was like and try really hard to remember and to empathize a lot more.
And finally, we talk about how he's exploring returning to the workforce after so much time away from the professional world.
I went to school. I have a computer science degree. And so a lot of people, when I talk to them about this, they say, oh, well, you've got a computer science degree. You should be able to get a job. Alex, I graduated with a computer science degree 12 years ago.
Here's my conversation with fellow podcaster and my friend, Bobby Frankenberger. Bobby Frankenberger, welcome back to the Dad Chronicle. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. We were just talking before we started recording. It's been like 6 years since I talked to you about family. I mean, I guess we talk about family dad stuff in our social life, but
yeah.
You know, in a more formal capacity like this.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about our relationship since ANTP ended, and it's really like we've been hanging out a whole lot more than maybe the audience of the Dad Chronicle really realize, if unless you're in the guild or whatever. But we've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft and talking about our kids and stuff, and then we started having conversations about some of the changes in your life and your family's life, where we were like, you know what, let's bring the conversation back to this show. I appreciated you reaching out because I think that some of the things that we're going to talk about today really resonate with dads, especially like if you think about the cadence of this show 6 years ago. I mean, if people were listening back then to your conversation with me, their lives have changed, I'm sure, as dads or parents or whatever. So everybody's kind of growing up together a little bit in this world of parenting. So before we jump into a little bit of that change in your life and everything going on, let's remind people a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name's Bobby Frankenberger. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I've been a stay-at-home dad since my first daughter was born almost about 12 and a half years ago now. I've filled my time with podcasting. I'm a podcaster. That's how, Alex, you and I met, is through my podcasting, and I primarily do science podcasting right now, which is a great thing for me because I get to do science communication, and it connects me with my kids and their schools and stuff like that a lot. I get to go into their schools and do science stuff there as well. But yeah, that's kind of what my life looks like right now.
Yeah, you've got a real knack for that. I've when Scott Johnson and I were sitting next to each other at the recent TMS Vegas, Scott leaned over. He goes, "He really is science Jesus, isn't he?" And I was like, yeah, because you got that hair, you've got the approach. It's just you make everything really make sense. So I think that's you've found a real calling in that niche and everything else. And Yeah, like you mentioned, we've been collaborating, I think, on a variety of things from the ANTP seasons, America's Next Top Podcaster. If you're not familiar with that, I was the runner-up of season 1. You were the runner-up of season 2. And then we've been playing World of Warcraft ever since together.
Yeah.
Doing the filthy casuals gaming stuff and all the other tangential WoW community stuff together. You've also been working with Scott on the instance, so that's been fun.
Yep.
What do you think about the state of World of Warcraft right now?
I think it's that game's so old that it has lots of ups and downs, but I think it's on an upswing right now, and I'm really excited about it because there's a lot of really cool changes happening in that game that I'm thrilled to be able to be like you said, partnered with Scott Johnson about talking about that and getting excited about it in a public way. It's been really fun.
So fun. Yeah, and it's really cool to see the evolution of a game that's decades old at this point.
And speaking of the context of this show, parenting and everything, it's never been more friendly to, and I feel like every time someone asks about this, I'm always saying this, but it is true every time that it's never been more friendly to like a very busy parent,
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really fantastic.
You can jump in and out and feel like you haven't fallen behind too much. Even playing with your kids, there's a lot of friendly parental tools. I hop on with Arya every once in a while. She's 8, and that one button rotation thing has been a game changer for her as she's learning how to just play the game. And the parental stuff, actually Blizzard's come a long way. So it's funny to think about the previous comment that I made about growing up on this show. I mean, growing up with World of Warcraft in a lot of ways. It's just funny how all of these things just fold into parenting and hanging out with your kids and doing things and having is also opens up discussions for the internet and how all that stuff works. So
oh my gosh, yeah.
Speaking of navigating things with your kids, one of the things that we wanted to bring up was the topic of puberty. You had oh gosh, how old was Zoe?
She would have probably been about 5 last time I was on the show.
And now here we are. I mean, we're in the throes of, 6-7 years later, this is the throes of puberty. Talk to me a little bit about what life is like now, maybe comparatively to the last time that you were on the show.
Yeah, so that's what inspired me. You said I reached out to you, and I was listening to your show, and I was thinking about the last time I was on the show and how it just struck me how different everything was back then. Back then, our conversation was a lot about like, finally settling into, it took me some time, but settling into being a stay-at-home dad and what that means and all that kind of stuff. And then now, everything's just always changing, and that's what I thought about. And the biggest, most disruptive, most challenging and heart-wrenching in a lot of ways as a parent change is one that I'm going through right now, and I don't feel like anyone can maybe can or at least didn't adequately prepare me for it, which is the transition into being a teenager and going through puberty. And because my oldest, who, like you said, 5-6 years old last time we talked, that's what we're dealing with now. Dealing with, I mean, like it's in a lot of ways you are dealing with it,
yeah.
But it's an inevitability, but it's hard. It's really hard. And so I reached out to you and I said, look, I haven't been on in a long time. I'd love to come on and talk and just be on the show, but this is what I'm going through right now, and this is I'm always thinking about, and the minefield and challenge that I'm dealing with and thinking about constantly. And I know that there are other people out there who are maybe on the precipice of this, and it's like I want to get out and be like warning, this is what's coming.
It's so
and we laugh, but there are going to be I'm sure we'll talk about it. There are some really
it's true.
Tough things.
And it's something that I'm thinking about. I mean, Arya's 8. In no time, she will be in a similar position to your daughter. I am very curious. So just being in your position that you were in, 5 or 6 years ago, like, I don't know, Bobby, help me look in my crystal ball here. What is the big warning signs that I should be looking for? Or, in all seriousness, how does one prepare for a child going into puberty?
I hate to say it this way because I think there are things you can do maybe to mentally prepare yourself in a certain way, but in many ways there's nothing you can do to prepare for it, because I think that every kid is probably very, very different, and regardless, you think that things are going to go a certain way, and they absolutely, or at least this was for me, absolutely takes a complete left turn, and you don't know what's happening. I mean, and the first things, I mean, we knew it was coming, for like physiological reasons and all that. We knew it was coming eventually, but the pediatrician we had just gone to the pediatrician. She was like, "Oh yeah, this is, progressing on its course, and you've got probably another year before, this hits." And then, I'm not kidding, like a month later, Zoe had her first period. And that was a big challenge. Now, there's lots of ways that I think you can deal with that, but I think what I struggle with more, like that was all just straight ahead. Like, this is what you have to do, and it's like you're teaching your kid a different routine in a different part of life.
Right.
But all the challenges that I've had as a parent, are with just how your kid just people say this, and I think so. Okay, let me say it before I explain it. Which is that it feels like your kid just like wakes up one day and a switch has been flipped and they're just a different person.
Wow.
And I know people told me that before, but it was always with like a laugh, like, "Oh yeah, they're just a totally different person." And I was like, "Ha, yeah, that's whatever." Like you feel like it must be some sort of gradual change and everything, but I'm here to tell you, at least with my daughter, it really was like that. It was like one day she was the Zoe we know, and the next day she was just a different person. It was like someone had taken over her, like an alien had abducted her and replaced her mind with somebody else. It really felt that way.
Wow.
So that's one thing that you really just have to be prepared that this is likely, or at least in the realm of possibilities. And for me, that was really, really hard, because what are the ways that she changes? One thing is that it's normal for kids, and I know this from my psychology background, it's normal for kids as they're developing through social development and all this kind of stuff too. And I don't know if this is like rooted in evolution. You could say all kinds of like brain evolution things, but I'm not a big, devoted fan of evolutionary psychology. But you can say what it makes sense that a child would need to, for social development reasons, start to pull away from their parents and their family and start to place a large importance on friendships, right? And if you think about yourself, I'm sure, Alex, like you probably went through a phase like that too, and you might still be in that phase as an adult, where your chosen family, your extended family, your friends become the most important thing to you, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so that's normal, and I think I kind of like academically understood that, but I was always thinking about it from her perspective, like, yeah, that's normal. She'll go through that and everything. And what I wasn't prepared for was what that does to you as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You're hitting the root of where I'm thinking in my head. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And as a parent, so Zoe and I, for example, of my two, her and I have always had a really close relationship. We spent a lot of time chatting in bed at night before she goes to bed. We'd do all kinds of things together. Her and I loved playing video games together. We were really, really close. And then suddenly, she literally does not want to be in the same room with me anymore. I can tell you, and this is not an exaggeration, I can count on one hand in the past week the number of times that she's let me give her a hug. And that's big for me. I'm like a very physical touch kind of love language person. I love hugs. I love like just slapping people on the back and putting my arm, like I'm that kind of person. And she does not want anything to do with that. It was maybe a week ago, I was like, I don't remember what the context was, but just, she probably told me like something that happened at school or something like that. And I was like expressing pride. So I went to go and pat her on the back, and she, like almost like a cartoon, she like recoiled from me and like had this disgusted look on her face, like, do not touch me. And I was like, oh, and it's so hard, Alex. Yeah. And the thing that's hard is to not take it personally, right? Yeah. That's the hard part. And I'm still dealing with that. You can probably tell by the way I'm talking.
I sense a lot of how, honestly, how frustrating that must feel for you. How like, devastating, because like you're saying this, it's breaking my heart as a girl dad to hear some of that. Like, how are you coping with that?
So I have to sit down a lot, and I have to, and my wife, Stephanie, you met Stephanie recently.
She's wonderful.
She helps me. Yeah, she is. She's great. She's able to help me. She works, so she doesn't spend all day with the kids constantly. So I think in a lot of ways it's easier for her to come at it a little bit more objectively.
Yeah.
So she's able to help remind me and remind me to tell myself, this is normal, Bobby. Everything she's going through right now is completely normal.
Yeah.
I've also had other parents tell me that recently I was for my younger daughter at a soccer thing, and one of the other soccer parents, she's some administrator at a middle school. So she's dealing with kids this age all the time, right? Seeing them right from 6th grade all the way to 8th grade, which is when our middle school is. So she's seeing kids like at the start of like they're starting puberty all the way to 8th grade, when they're like finally most of them are like nestled in it and kind of gotten through that really difficult, awkward phase. And she told me, don't worry, you get your kid back by the end of 8th grade, right? And so yeah. I try to remember that, but that, Alex, it's like 3 years.
Yeah. It's a long time, and that's a long time to be feeling the way that you feel. But I think that, to your point, it's like that just looking at it objectively, as hard as that is, I don't know. I mean, there's something to that. I think a lot about how parenting is chunked up into all these little moments. This is a moment that you're in, and it sucks. Absolutely sucks. You're gonna have to go through it again. In fact, just like you're going through now. I mean, maybe, who knows? Everybody's different, right? All of our kids are different, but wow, that's gotta be hard.
But you're right. There are all these different phases. I remember. This is a joke that I know parents joke about a lot, which is that when you have a newborn, you're desperately saying, okay, as soon as they're sleeping through the night, this whole parenting thing will get better. It'll get easier. Then, they're sleeping through the night, and yes, you get some more rest, and that part is easier. But now, they're coming into the learning to crawl and walk around phase. They're getting their hands into everything. Okay, they're constantly needing your attention. You're like, okay, once they get into this phase, this will get easier. And every step of the way, you're thinking, this is going to get easier once they're a little bit older. And the things that you were dealing with in that moment, they do get easier. But you're then presented with the next set of very difficult challenges.
Gosh,
right?
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, and so, yeah, we're reaching a phase now where both of my kids, one's 9, one's 12, they're both a lot more independent. They can make themselves breakfast if I need them to. I can, when we get done talking now, I'm going to go on a run, and they're able to stay at home for just an hour while I go on a run. That's something I never used to be able to do. I had to always wait for my wife to be home. I can leave them at home to run to all these things. They're independent now. Schoolwork is a lot more independent. But, with that comes a whole new set of challenges. You know, this puberty thing is one set of challenges, but then you have the whole, like, with independence comes a whole new set of. I think what happens is your time and energy becomes less like directly demanding, but then you transition into this phase where it all becomes about you're constantly worried about them because they're independent, more independent, you know?
Wow. The thing that you just said right there kind of blew my mind, because I remember just being, let's say in Zoe's shoes, you know, like going through puberty, being like, oh, why are they always worried about me and this and that? But as you're describing this sense of independence and getting away from maybe your watchful eye, oh my God, it's giving me anxiety. And now I'm like, oh my God, I see how my parents felt. Like, as you're explaining this, I'm having a moment. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and I think that transition to being worried, the reason you're so worried about them now that they're more independent, I think is, in both a good and a bad way, a very selfish worry.
It is. Yeah.
And so it's selfish because it's a good thing. The reason I say it's a good thing is because you're worried about them for very good reasons.
Right.
But what I mean by it being selfish is maybe selfish is the wrong word, but self-centered. And it's because, at least for me, the worry comes from, okay, I've spent the past 12 years getting her, or whatever, 10 years, because like I said, my 9-year-old is very independent as well. I've spent all these 10 years doing the best that I can. Now I get to start seeing if I did a good job.
Yeah, it's the fruits of your labor. Absolutely.
Yeah, so now they're independent. Hopefully I prepared them well enough for this independence. And that's scary. That's a really scary thing.
God, it's so scary. And with that independence, I mean, like, how are you feeling now that they are getting a whole lot more independent? You know, your role as a stay-at-home dad has been to really be a caretaker and somebody that's been really hands-on with your kids. As that's slipping away, maybe that's the right word for it, I don't know, like, you know, as that transition perhaps is happening, what's going through your mind as the stay-at-home dad in this scenario?
Yeah, because I do find myself with a lot more free time. There's some guilt that's associated with that because I've spent so much time trying to play all the time. You know, when they're really young, you're always wanting to like engage and play and all that kind of stuff. But now they don't. Even my younger daughter doesn't always want that. You know, she's like, hey, I'll ask her, hey, you want to read this book we're reading together? Because we still will read together sometimes. She still loves to do that. And she'll be like, no, I'd rather go call my friends, or I'd rather go do some other thing on her own. And that's fine. It's whatever.
Yep.
But so then I'm like, great, okay, I can sit down and play a video game, but then I'll spend an hour playing a video game. And there's still, even though I know I was given permission to do it, there's still this like reflexive guilt, like, oh, I just spent an hour doing something on my, and I'm getting over that, and it doesn't happen anymore as often, but you kind of like slowly have to almost train yourself into thinking like, okay, you're still being a good parent by letting them do their own thing.
Yeah. So is the guilt mostly like that you're feeling like you're maybe not like watching your kids, or is it like that you should be doing something quote unquote more productive with your time than playing a video game? Or I'm just curious what that thought is.
Probably a little of all of that, you know.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to imagine right now, put myself in that position, I just sat down, asked, you know, she said, okay, I'm going to go do my own thing. Oh, all right. And I sit in the office for an hour and I'm like, oh, I'm going to play a video game. If I put myself in that mindset, I think the thing that I feel when I get done with that is my immediate thought is, oh, I don't know I wonder what my children are doing right now. And it's like, am I supposed to is that an okay thing for me to, and then I have to remind myself, yes, it's fine. They're independent kids and they can take care of themselves. It's okay for you to not know what they're doing constantly. Mm-hmm. And so that's where a lot of that comes from. And that, going back to what Zoe's going through, my older daughter, with almost being a teenager, she's always in her room. So I never know what she's doing. And that's hard because I always knew what she was doing before, right? And so navigating that is also a challenge because you have to let them be their own person. They want to. She used to get she's getting better, by the way. But it used to be like everything I would talk to her about, she'd be angry with me about it. You know, that whole stereotype of an angry teenager who's just like, God, leave me alone. You know, it's true. It's a stereotype for a reason. It's what's happening. And I used to get really mad about it. And I'd tell her, I'd push back. I'd be like, look, you need to be respectful and you need to stop talking to me that way, you know, like all that kind of stuff. But the more and more I thought about it, I would think about myself when I was that age, right? And I'd be like, no, you know, I really did just spend all my time in my room. I would just listen to music. And I would ask Zoe, what kind of music are you listening to? And I remember one time I asked her that and she like looked me dead in the eyes and she said, do I have to answer that question?
Oh.
And I was like, well, I guess no, I'm not going to. And then she just left. She was like, okay.
Oh, jeez, Bobby.
And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm not going to know what kind of music you're listening to. And I'm like, who is she? You know, like it's, but I think back. So I think I'm kind of like going on a
no, this
tangent
is
here, but
great context. Honestly, it's fine.
You're in a lot of ways, you're being a little bit of a therapist for me right now.
It's fine. Listen, that's, and honestly, people listening to this show probably relate a lot to what you're talking about, or they're like me and they're like listening intently because I am just, I'm looking into the crystal ball right now at what my future might look like, you know? Yeah. So if and this might end up transitioning to more advice that I have. And then, so yeah, she was in that particular example, that story I was just telling, she wouldn't tell me what music she's listening to. So I was thinking, I was like, man, she just hates me. So I sat down and I thought about it and I really thought about it. And I thought, well, no, I used to sit in my room. I would listen to music. I had all these things, but you know what I tried to remind myself and remember from when I was a kid is all these things were like the things I did that were me, and I did them in the privacy of my own space. You know, they might be books I was reading, they might be games I was playing, they might be music I was listening to. And if my mom had come in and was asking me to share the music I was listening to with her, I'd be like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, I don't want to, like, this is me. In a lot of ways, it feels very private especially when you're a teenager and you're learning who you are. Right. And I think you asked me before, what do I do to cope? And I gave you a lot of like the very straight ahead, reminding myself this is normal. But there's a lot of other things. Like I spend a lot of time now trying very hard to empathize with her and remember. It's hard to remember when you were a teenager. But I think we are also uniquely, like, I think that is a time, you know, it's even harder to remember when you were a 6 or 7 year old, right? Right. When you were a teenager, it's when you really started to become a lot more coming into yourself. And I think we do have a lot more capability to reach back there and think about what it was like and try really hard to remember and to empathize a lot more. And so to remember, like, they're learning who they are now, because you very much are becoming a new person in a lot of ways when you're going through all those changes. It's so true. It's so true. Like that's your formative years. That's why they call it, like, those are majorly formative years. Exactly. Formative years. You're forming who you're going to become. Yeah. Right? And that's a really personal thing to go. I mean, it's literally a very personal thing to go through. And when you're also feeling those big feelings like you feel when you're a teenager and all the hormones and other things like that, and then you're trying to navigate how certain things set you off from your parents and everything, I think that idea of leading with empathy is really solid, because it's so easy to take it personally. I was just thinking back to the thing you said about, like, taking it personally. My God, everything that you're saying right now it feels extremely personal. And I can tell that it hits you in a really personal way. It would hit me in a very personal way. But the idea of stepping outside of yourself and recentering yourself as a parent and leading with it as a very, like this is your kid going through it. Let them go through the things that they need to go through and be there as the guardrails, essentially, to help them navigate when they need you. Like that's so important.
Yeah. And it's not personal, right? It's not about you. It's about them.
Exactly.
And they need that space. And honestly, if you're really doing the work, empathizing, you will come to the realization, like I'm starting to come to, that not only is it very personal and not only is it very private, but it's very confusing and it's very scary. And and I was talking to my good friend Maura. She was just on your show not too long ago.
Yeah.
She does the science podcast with me. I was talking to her about this not very recently, and she said something to me that really struck with me. So I want to share it with everybody, which is that when she works with kids this age, so she spends a lot of time thinking about kids this age. And so she said they're all going through this transition of, like I said earlier, caring a lot about your parents. Your parents are the center of your entire world when you're, all the way up until this point, right? And then for whatever reason, you go through this mental shift to where your friends and the groups that you're forming at your friend groups become the center of your world. They're the most important thing to you. And I knew that, but the thing that she said to me that really struck was there's probably a lot of guilt associated with that for her as a child. Because imagine knowing that you don't care very much about your, like from her perspective, she just doesn't care about her family anymore.
Right.
She just wants to be around her friends all the time, and that's all she cares about. And imagine how that must feel like thinking, why don't I care? Shouldn't I care about my parents? But I don't.
Wow.
And that probably is confusing, scary, makes you feel guilty. And I just try to imagine, it's not about me. It is very much about her and what she's going through. And so that's the shift that I'm making now, is to try to really support that, try to give her the space she needs. If she's really just giving me all the signs that I don't want to be around you right now. Okay, don't. Go ahead. You got to do your thing, and just knowing that, yeah, it hurts my feelings. And, we don't let her just be a total jerk. You still need to learn to be a decent human being.
Yeah. It's a good opportunity, of course, correct. But you still, it's the guardrails that I mentioned. I think that it's a really important analogy as you're a parent, is to let your kids explore the things that they need to explore, especially in a formative situation like this. It makes a lot of sense. And that's very profound what Maura said. I think I'm not surprised that came out of her mouth. She's very smart as well.
Is, yeah.
And so I think that's very profound to think and to also center yourself around that empathy. That is what exactly. I keep coming back to, and just kind of thinking about these formative and transformative years for her. I mean, it's not just for her, but it's also for you. And now that you are taking more of a hands-off approach in some capacities, and your transformation as a dad, this topic that we talked about a bit offline about kind of the transitions that you're making from, the ways that you're spending time, the things that you're doing. Talk to us a little bit about how you are approaching some of this shift in your own personal life, and how maybe where your head is at.
Yeah. Yeah, because we talk about independence, I find myself with a lot more free time. I'm definitely a kind of person who likes to fill my time with something. I don't just like to sit around.
Yeah.
And
same. Yeah.
And so traditionally, as I've gotten more free time, I say traditionally, but what I mean historically, as I've gotten more free time, I would, give myself more projects, podcasting projects, other kinds of things to work on. I'm not much of a tinkerer at home. I don't I'd rather hire someone to do that. I'm not much of a DIY home. So, and the reason I say that is a lot of people listening, a lot of dads might be like, oh, more time to, I'm going to rebuild the deck or something. That's not me.
Yeah.
But
I mean, same.
So,
by the way, yeah, same.
And so I've been sitting around and thinking about all this free time and I've been thinking about how to get back to work. I've been spending a lot of time as a stay-at-home dad, and I've been thinking about getting back into the workplace. And it's not all just motivated by filling free time. A lot of it is motivated by the fact that, I mean, the economy these days, Alex.
Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong.
We've been able to make it this far with just one of us working, but I don't think that's going to sustain for too much longer. I think we're gonna, we could, but to maintain the level of lifestyle that you have, I think I'm gonna have to start thinking about getting a job and
finding more ways to supplement that income and bring in and do the things. Yeah. No, it makes total sense.
But also, so there's I'm going to put a pin in that in a second for a second, because I think there's more to say about that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is because I've been thinking about going back to work for a little bit longer than I've been thinking about, economic viability.
Yeah.
But the reason I think is because as my kids need me less, I'm looking for ways to be more useful in quotes. Because if I say this to my wife, and I have said this to my wife, she, like the supportive wife she is, turns right around and says, you are still very useful to the family. And I do believe that. I'm not like the person who thinks I'm not useful to the family because I'm sitting at home.
It's an important thing for her to say, though, because I know that, because I feel it too. It's like, I think this is an inherent thing around men sometimes, most of the time probably, is that, if I'm not providing value, then what am I? Like if I'm not doing X,
and there's
Y,
a lot
and Z,
of
there's a lot of psychology around that with mental health for men. So I get it.
Yeah, society puts a lot of pressure on us too, I think. And but my family and extended family don't really do any of that anymore. So it's been a long time since I've felt that kind of pressure. But internally, I sometimes feel a lot of pressure to like be useful in a way of providing for the family. I hate saying it that way because that's like real, like stereotypical masculinity. And I don't mean it in that way. I don't mean like provide as a man. I just mean as a member of the family. Right.
I follow you.
So I think about going back to work in what way I can, but it's hard because, Alex, I went to school. I have a computer science degree. And so a lot of people, when I talk to them about this, they say, oh, well, you've got a computer science degree. You should be able to get a job. Alex, I graduated with a computer science degree 12 years ago.
Yeah.
As someone who works in and around tech like you do, you probably already inherently understand my worry with that, which is 12 years ago, that was like it might as well be the 80s of when I learned how to use computer. Like so much has changed in 12 years. They're not looking, if I am in an applicant pool with people who just came out of college, they're going to take those people who just came out of college because, quite honestly, they know a lot more than I do.
The relevancy specifically. Yeah.
So that's one of the challenges is how do I get back in and in a useful, like where do I even start to try and get a job? That's a thought that that fills my mind all the time, and so I'm trying to leverage all this science communication stuff that I've been doing recently. That's a little bit more of a niche skill I think that that I might be able to. But you have to get a lot more creative with that and and figure out ways to invent jobs that people didn't realize that they needed.
Yeah, I mean, hey, communication, technology, science, research, analysis, insight, all of these things, that you've been inherently doing, just not in a formal professional setting. But, just knowing you and the work that you've been doing, I think it certainly applies. But to your point, it's like you got to be able to say, hey, here's everything that I've done up to this point. Yeah, I might not have held a quote unquote like professional like workplace job at a thing, doing a thing, but it was but here's how I've still leveraged my skill sets and what I can bring to this role.
Yeah.
And it might require you to take like an entry level role at a place, or continue doing training or something of that nature. So like as you're thinking about this predicament you're in, like how are you kind of contextualizing and thinking about how you might apply some of those things or approach this sense of like catching up with the industry? And do you have a sense of like what you want to actually do?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, science communication is my passion right now. And I think there are a lot of organizations that could take someone who has some experience in science communication. So one of the things I'm doing is podcasting. So that starts to create a portfolio for yourself of experience, right?
Yep.
I'm gonna, before too long, start doing some maybe like TikTok content. The point not being to get a bunch of followers, but to be able to have a portfolio of like, this is the kind of stuff that I can and do. And then, you look at places like museums, you look at places like children's science centers nearby, you look at places like the zoo, but also schools and school districts, stuff like that. So I'm going to be doing that here in the near future. But right now it's about like building all of that if I can, because it's just, I don't know, it's challenging. It really is challenging. I've had to do a lot of thinking about it because, I feel very much like what I used to hear people like my parents and women and mothers who are at home and stay at home. I feel like that's the situation. Like I understand a lot more what the fear and the worry in them was, because what they did and what I did was chose to take myself out of the competitive workplace, right?
Right.
And when you do that, with that goes a lot of things that help keep you competitive. Like I don't have, like if I try to put together a resume, the last job I had was like 14 years ago.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So, and there's other things you can put on a resume other than a job. So
exactly.
I know that, but these are the things that I think about is like I have those skills are just different now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an exercise in sort of like creative thinking, figuring out how to take the skills I have developed and learned and used and exercised over time and turn those into marketable professional skills that people would like. And it's challenging, and it's also feels worrisome. I had this thought that started to pop into my head recently. It's like an intrusive thought that enters into a dream every now and then, or just when I'm sitting around the house, which is of the place of vulnerability I feel like I've gotten myself into, which is if Stephanie, my wife, were to walk outside and cross the street and get hit by a bus, like we would be screwed.
Yeah.
Because I have no job. I mean, we would, we'd figure out a way, but it would be hard.
It's
right?
easy to fall into that for sure. Fall into that thinking.
And so those are thoughts that pop into my head, and that's another thing that motivates me, wanting to get out there and figure out how I can start working and provide that level of stability. You don't want to think about those things.
No, of course not. But the one thing that I always like to remind people of is that where there's a will, there's a way, and what's really clear about you and your dedication to your family, especially, I mean, you talked about putting your life, your professional, quote unquote, professional life on hold for, 12, 14 years. to take care of your kids. There's inherent acts of selflessness throughout your entire parental career, right? And that translates into a dedication where there's a will, which there is a way, and you will find it, right? And I think that the thing for a lot of folks listening to this to think about too is, you're not going to find that answer right away. And that's part of the frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of people is that there is that sense of worry or immediate relief that's needed to know that, oh, okay, all right, I'm good. If, we have this other option or something's good. In some cases, it might not pop up right away. Maybe some cases it might. But it's really important to take some steps back and think about, okay, how do I apply this now, and think logically about where I can start, and seeing it, as very much the start of very much like the beginning of what's next in your phase of life. We talked about phases of life with Zoe and everything that she's going through, and this entire sense of almost rebirth into a new person. And there's a lot of opportunity, I think, some symbolism or mirroring in how this is affecting you now, and thinking about how you take that next step. And I think not just providing empathy for your daughter, but provide empathy for yourself, and knowing that this is a really good opportunity to explore something new and exciting. I would honestly, I'm excited hearing what you're saying, because as somebody who's I've made several transitions in my career over the last almost 20 years doing IT related stuff, from sales, account management, program management, even bringing some of the creative stuff of what I do here with podcasting and some of the other things. So there's a lot of ways to reinvent yourself. And I think that's it's never too late to reinvent yourself, especially today with the internet and a whole bunch of other things. So, I hope that at least helps you think about it it's easy for you to listen to me and hear me trying to provide some inspiration or whatever. But as somebody that works in the field, I think that especially with all the tools and the different things that are out there, making career shifts is way more feasible than it's ever been.
Yeah, and something you're making me think about just now for the first time. So thank you for the therapy.
Yeah, of course. I'll bill you later.
Is that when we look ahead at the unknown, there's a million possibilities, right? And a lot of them are ways that things could go very wrong, and some of them are ways that could go right, and some of them are really good. There's just the wide range of possibilities, and that can be really scary, because that's all in front of you and that's unknown, and you don't know which path you're going to end up going down. And when you look behind you, there's one path, right, that you came along.
Yep.
And it feels when you look behind you like that path was inevitable. But if you walk backwards at every, inflection point along the way, along that singular path that you've come from, at each of those paths, there were also looking forward a million possibilities. And it's not that you're the genius that picked the right one that got you where you are today. It's just that you went down one and you made it work.
Yep. That you nailed it. Life is full of a bunch of different paths and forks in the road. It's just that when you look back, those forks in the road are now overgrown. You didn't go through that path. Yeah. There's a different one that was forged ahead, and now you've got several paths in front of you, and you have opportunities to do something. It's just a matter of how you approach it and the mindset. So that's a really healthy way to look at it.
And I think the analogy, to go back again and say what you were saying a minute ago about it being an analogy for what we were talking about earlier with my almost teenager. It's the same thing. Right now it seems really hard, and what are we doing, and all the things we might be doing wrong, but everything has led up to this point, and you're going to just navigate it, and you're going to figure out the best way to get through it for you and your family. I mean, I'm talking about myself, right? But also to everyone listening, to me and my family, and when we get there in a few years or 5 years or 10 years, it will feel, we will have survived.
100%.
So I think it's
just scary.
Right.
In the
It's
moment.
good to have that.
It's that.
It's
that
good to have that
growth,
perspective.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this therapy session was helpful for you. How are you feeling?
Yes, I'm feeling good. Sundays are good for me. So if we want to schedule those, how much do you charge per session?
I won't charge you any money. Just send me 100,000 in gold in World of Warcraft. And hey, speaking of World of Warcraft, and you're also like a Dungeons and Dragons / Pathfinder / you appreciate all the tabletop stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I realized I never really got the chance to ask you this, and I always like to ask the parents who enjoy those sort of things to kind of label their children in a certain way. As you think about Zoe and her transformation going through puberty, what D&D like class do you think that she embodied pre-puberty, and then now that she's hit puberty, like where does she fall as far as her class goes?
That's an awesome question. I think before she was very like maybe like a trickster rogue or something like that. Before she was always really just like fun and mischievous and trying to get into trouble and but in like a fun kind of way, not like a this is a problem kind of way.
Yeah.
But now, I think I'd say a druid. She loves nature.
Okay.
But so that's not the real reason I'd say druid. I think it fits. It happens to fit. But the real thing about the druid is that they can shift and change forms, right?
Yeah.
And so and you can be like, you can be this nice sweet thing that feels like hanging out with us, or on an instant you can transform into a very angry bear, and cause lots of damage and stuff just to defend yourself. So it feels right for me.
That's amazing. I was kind of expecting you to go full on stereotypical like barbarian, like go and rage and.
No, because the part that I think I've neglected to say through this whole conversation is that especially now as it's been like a good year since she started, full on puberty and everything. She is starting to come around, and there are plenty of those times when she's glad to hang out with us and talk to us. It's just you cannot predict. Moment to moment is all.
Oh, that's great. She's you guys are doing an amazing job. It was fun talking about how far the kids have come along when we were together in Vegas, and God, you were talking about how she was like going to was it her first school dance or something?
Yeah, she was about to do that. She had a blast there. She loved it.
It's so crazy just how time flies, and catching up with you about everything that's been going on, and getting the latest of your journey has been an absolute blast. So, folks at home, by the way, if you want to chime in on anything that we're talking about, or if you have perspectives to share with Bobby, I usually do a plug for the email at the end of the show, but just for the sake of this, like, feel free to email the dadchroniclepodcast@gmail.com. But Bobby, I want to give you an opportunity to pimp your stuff, but it's like, people are going to be listening to this, and maybe they can chime in and reach out to you with thoughts or suggestions. How do people reach you, and why don't you just pimp your stuff?
Yeah, so I have 2 science podcasts that I do right now. One is weekly with Maura Armstrong, who you had on not too long ago, and that's All Around Science. So you can check that out. It's just called All Around Science. We've got a website and find it in podcast catcher things. But also I do a daily 10-minute science news podcast where I just spend 10 minutes talking about, 3 or 4 things that are going on in science news from the previous day, and we hit them real fast and then get out of there. It's called Daily Science Brief. So, dailysciencebrief.com. You can email, if you want to email and get in touch with me, that's a good way to do that is to email dailysciencebrief@gmail.com is where I get all of those. So
nice.
Yeah.
Good. And yeah, go follow Bobby on all the things. He makes some good content. And if you want to watch us play World of Warcraft, I don't know, have you been streaming any of the raids or anything? I just started streaming the new one.
Yeah, I haven't been doing much streaming lately because my computers are causing trouble.
Oh, that's fair. Well, if you want to hear Bobby's voice in our raid, you can just follow me on Twitch. That's fine. But this has been a pleasure, as always, having you on the show. So thank you so much. Our guest has been Bobby Frankenberger, going through tremendous transformations in all sorts of ways over there. So thank you again, Bobby, for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again to Bobby for being on the show again and sharing the latest on what's going on. It's quite a challenge, and it's a lot of emotion that goes into navigating all these changes in his household. So I appreciate you coming on, being vulnerable, talking about it. And the same goes to our audience out there. If there's anything that you'd like to chime in on, feel free to email the Dad Chronicle podcast at gmail.com. And as always, make sure that you're subscribed to the show by following us on your favorite podcatcher. You can head over to thedadchronicle.com to see where we live, but you can find us on anything that you can listen to podcasts on. So that's YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it is. Make sure that you're following. And also, if you'd like to support the work that we're doing here, you can become a patron. Head over to supportadad.com. Even $1 a month makes a big difference in supporting the operational costs of running a show like this. And I'll quickly plug here as well, if you are interested in following any of the streaming that I do online, like if you have an interest in World of Warcraft or anything, you can follow me, twitch.tv/AlexAlvisu. You will hear a lot of familiar voices from this show and also the rest of the community as we play World of Warcraft together. Feel free to jump into any of the discussions that we're having during raid or whatever. We usually raid Wednesdays from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to jump in and chime in on anything that you want to talk about there. Twitch.tv/AlexAlvisu. So thanks again for listening. And remember, be good to yourself and be good to others out there. We'll see you next time.
If you like this show, check out more great content at incastmedianetwork.com.